Hi there. I hope you and your families are in good health and everything is fine. As you can see today, we'll be focusing on deductive arguments, but I'm going to do this chapter in two parts because it requires some practice before we move ahead. Throughout this video, you might see some charts or diagrams, but I promise you that they're not as difficult as they look. Well, uh, they're worse. If you bear with me, we can figure them out together. Like always, we'll have an online session on Friday. If you have any questions regarding this part of the unit, the session is not obligatory, so you don't have to worry if you can't join. In this chapter, we'll deal with categorical logic, and in the next chapter, we'll talk about truth functional knowledge. These two chapters can help us clarify and analyze deductive arguments. Studying categorical and later truth functional logic can help us to become better, uh, maybe readers, and more careful and precise in our thinking and speaking and reading and writing, of course. So, actually, all skills. Okay, you can pause the video and have a look at the aims. Categorical logic is based on four claims. I guess it's self-explanatory to say that a categorical claim says something about categories or classes of things, of people, or times, or even places. Well, this sounds more like begging the question fallacy from what we had earlier. I mean, to say the categorical claim is a claim about categories. Now, if we make a claim about a group or a class or category, what should we call it? We call it a categorical claim. For instance, if I say the Greeks are Europeans, I'm thinking of a group of people that I label as Greeks, and then another class or category that I call Europeans. Now, on the screen, you see some sentences with some blanks. What are they? The first one, all blank are blank. Two, which is marked E. No blank are blank. I, some blank are blank. And O, some blank are not blank. Now, why am I using the word blank so much? Because we need to use it, and you'll see how we'll use it in a minute. Now, I just gave you the example of all Greeks are Europeans, for example, right? Now, in this sentence of mine, what did I use in the first blank? I used Greeks. Are Greeks a group of people, a category? Yes, they are. What about Europeans that I used for the second blank? Yes, they are. So all Greeks are Europeans is a claim or is a proposition, right? Now, in this proposition, we have two blanks that I filled in. What is the first one? Greeks. It is the subject, right? Remember that what you use to fill in the subject position is called the subject term, TRM. And what we use to fill in the second blank is known as the predicate term. So what did I use in this case? I used two terms. One for the first blank, we called it the subject term, and one for the second blank, we called it the predicate term. Okay, so in my example, all Greeks are Europeans. What were our two terms? The first term, the subject term, was Greeks, and the second one is the predicate term, which was the Europeans. Now, as you can see here, in a proposition or a claim like all Greeks are Europeans, the main thing here is our subject term, and what is said about the subject term is the predicate term. right? Now I'll give you some time to write some sentences and fill in the blanks. Remember that we fill the first blank and the second blank with nouns or noun phrases. It's okay to fill the second blank with adjectives, but for some of the operations that we'll see and need later and translations, I strongly recommend that you use nouns and pronouns or noun phrases for the two blanks. Sorry, don't use pronouns, okay? Okay, so now pause the video and write some sentences or examples, please. Now here are some examples that I've written. You can pause the video and look at the sentences and also the subject terms and the predicate terms that I've used here. Please pause the video. Welcome back. Now, as you can see, in each claim, the first blank is a subject or the subject term, and the second one is the predicate term. The subject term, let me remind you, that is what we are actually talking about, and the second part, that is the predicate, is about the subject, right? Now, if you pay attention, I have color-coded these four sentences. Two of them are blue, two of them are yellow. The blue ones are the positive ones, and the yellow ones are the negative ones. Now, one more important thing about maybe the categorical claims for our lesson here. As you can see, I have marked the claims as A, E, I, O. Think of them as the vowels we have in English, A, E, I, O, to try and remember them better maybe. This is how we will go ahead throughout the book with each claim. So when I say an A claim, it means a claim in which is affirmative, and then in which we have all X, R, Y. When I say an E claim, it means the second one, which is negative, and where we have no X, R, Y. Then the I, which is again affirmative, some X, R, Y, and O, which is negative, we say some X are not Y. So these are just some terminologies they use. They are not really that important. You can just name them anything you want. But for the consistency, maybe we can use these letters. So an A claim, an E claim, an I claim, and an O claim. Later, when we are discussing Venn diagram, we see these are going to be very helpful for us. Now let's look at Venn diagram. Venn was a British logician who used these diagrams for the first time. Let's look at our categorical claims. Remember, we had 4 categorical claims, and that these claims are about classes or categories. As you can see in each picture, there are 2 circles that overlap or intersect. There are some shaded areas, like in the first and the second ones, and some X's, and you can see the X's in the third and the fourth circles. The shaded areas mean that they're empty. It means there is nothing there. Now let's go to the first claim that we had and see how this first diagram can help us, or what it means. What was the first categorical claim we had? All S are P. Now here, let's say S is subject and P is predicate again. So when I say all S are P, look at the pair of circles. Which part of the circle S is not overlapping with P? the part which is shaded, right? This means if I say all S is P, which part should you get rid of? Or which part is empty? The part of S which is not intersecting with P. So we shade it. Now, the first claim, all S are P, applies to the unshaded part of S which intersects with P. So shading, again, means let's get rid of that part. So if I say all animals are living creatures, which part of the two circles am I referring to? The shaded part? No. The part intersecting with a P circle. Now look at the second picture. Which part is shaded? Yes. So it means the overlapping part should not be included. Now, what is the claim? The claim is no SRP, as you can see right below the circles. Now, let's move to the third picture. Can you mark the area that S and P have in common? Yes, it's marked with X. This is the area where I claims show up. Some S are P. And finally, the last picture is the O claim. Some S are not P. Can you see the X mark? That's where some S are not P. Okay, I think I've confused you enough. Why don't you stop and look at our previous sentences and try to draw the diagram for those sentences. Let me show you the sentences again. Now, draw the diagrams for each sentence here. This exercise can help you, especially with your next week activities. Don't forget to shade the areas that are empty and put the X's. Now let's see the answers on the next slide. Well, these are the diagrams for the sentences in the same order, right? Can you read the sentences below each diagram? The first one is all S are P. Is it affirmative or negative? It is affirmative. What about number 2? No S are P. It is negative. And some S are P? Affirmative. And some S are not P? It is negative. So you can see that 2 standard form categorical claims are affirmative and 2 are negative. Which claims are affirmative? A claims and I claims. And which are negative? E and O claims. Now we will use this classification later when we are talking about categorical operations. Now that we know how many standard categorical claims we have, I think we are good to go ahead. Now, when we hear or read a sentence, if they're not standard form categorical claims like the 4 that we discussed, we need to change them to standard claims. This is to make things easier for us, although it is apparently making them more difficult, right? So what are we going to do? Change non-standard forms to standard categorical claims so that they fit our 4 categorical claims. That is A, E, I, or U. So once again, if I give you a claim which is non-standard, what are you going to do? Make an equivalent claim which is standard. Now, why do I call it an equivalent claim? We say that 2 claims are equivalent claims if and only if they would be true in all and exactly the same circumstances. I can't say something and then translate it into something different. All things should apply. Remember that. For instance, if I say kids are a nuisance, can you tell me whether this is a standard claim? Kids are a nuisance. We say, no, it's not. Let's change it into a standard claim. Remember we had four standard claims. One was all x are y, no x are y, some x are y, and finally some x are not y. Now we'll have to translate my sentence into one of these sentences. So if again, if I say kids are a nuisance, I can't say it is standard and I need to change it to maybe an A claim, right? And say all kids are nuisances. Now, another example, if I say people under 18 are not eligible to vote, again, you can see that it's not standard because it doesn't follow any of those set patterns that we had. We can change it into an E claim and say, for example, no minor is eligible to vote, right? Now, what we do here in these cases is we just translate them. But remember that they will have to be equivalent, right? So what we need to pay attention to here is what is the subject and what is the predicate. Or better say, what is the subject class, what is the subject term, and what is the predicate term, or what is the predicate class. Then we'll have to decide what relation exists between the two terms. Remember, translation is, in a sense, paraphrasing. You should change what you read or hear into some standard forms. You should not change the meaning, obviously. Now, on the next two slides, I will share some more translations. Now, let's look at how we can change sentences with only, for example, to standard form categorical claims. Do not read the blue sentences on the slide, okay? Let's read the sentence right below our rule 1. The sentence says, only sophomores are eligible candidates. Is this a standard categorical sentence or claim? No, it's not. So let's see what we should do. What is the subject term here? Sophomores. And the predicate term? Eligible candidates. Let's start with only. If the claim we hear is only X's are Y's, then we change it to all Y's are X's. Now what happens here is that we switch the predicate and the subject terms and change only to all. Now this means we first use all instead of only and then transpose the subject term and the predicate term. For instance, if I say only sophomores are eligible candidates, are we using a standard claim? No. So what should I do? Translate? Exactly. How can I translate? I can use all instead of only and then switch the subject and the predicate terms, as you can see in the this sentence here on the slide. Okay, what about the next one? So now you can maybe rule the maybe you can read the rule, by the way. Let's now look at the second one. What is the second one? The second one, and again, please don't read the blue rule. Here it says the only people admitted are people over 21. Now, what is this here? Obviously, this is a bit different from the first example we had. Here, we are having a kind of restriction on the term, the subject term. Is that right? We are not saying the only people are people over 21, but the only people admitted are people over 21. So this means we are having a restriction on the predicate term. When there is a restriction on the on the subject term, what we need to do is retain the terms in their own positions and only use all instead of the only. So when the rule is the only x's are y's, will translate into all x's are y's. Okay. Now let's look at some other forms to translate into standard categorical claims. Look at this sentence. I always get angry when I see him. As you can see, this is not a standard claim again, because it doesn't go into any of those four categories that we had, and we need to change it into a standard one. Okay, so what are the terms here? Can you pause the video and say what the claim is about? Good. This is not about this is not about getting angry or seeing someone, but this is about the times or the occasions. Of course, indirectly it refers to getting angry or seeing, but it's mostly focusing on the terms times. So, as I said, it's about the occasions or the times. So let's see how we can change it into a standard one. Pause the video and write your own sentence. Did you write? Now, this is what we can say and how we can say it. We can say, all times I feel angry are times I see him. So, what type of claim did we turn it into? Now we turn it into an A claim. All times, right? I feel angry are times when I see him. Now remember, this rule applies to always and whenever, and the same thing might apply to wherever. So the claim is about the place. The claim is not about people or objects or whatever. Now another concern we have here with translation is when we have one individual. As you can remember, categorical claims are about categories or classes, not an individual or a person or an object or one time or place. But when we hear one claim about one person, what do? How do we change it into a standard categorical claim? This is what we can do with. We can turn them into A claims or E claims by saying maybe something like this. So let's look at this example. Aristotle is a logician. Now, is Aristotle a class? Obviously not. So how can I change this claim into a standard one? The trick is to add a phrase like this: all people identical with X. So here in this case, instead of saying Aristotle, I say all people identical with Aristotle are logicians. So now we have a standard A claim sentence, right? Now please pause the video and write one example, maybe just like this. Okay, I hope you made one and you figured out how to do it. The next problem or troublemaker is an uncountable noun or a mass noun. Let's use another example here from your book. It says, most boiled okra is too ugly to eat. Again, pause and translate the sentence into a standard claim. Maybe this time an I claim. Okay, did you do that? Good. Now remember, an I claim was when we said some x's are y's. Now, uh, if you haven't written some x's or y's as an I claim, maybe you can pause the video and do it again. Good. We can translate this into an I claim by saying some examples of boiled okra are things that are too ugly to eat, right? Good. Okay, now we are ready to move ahead and exhibit some relationships among the categorical claims through a square of opposition. If I want two categorical claims to correspond to each other, they should have the same subject and predicate terms. Look at these two sentences. All Greeks are logicians. A claim corresponds to the I claim. Some Greeks are logicians. They have the same subject and predicate terms. Now, if I say some logicians are Greeks, what have I done? I reverse the subject term and the predicate terms. Now, does this new sentence that I made correspond to the two sentences you see in the slide? No. Why not? Because the subject and predicate terms are in different positions. Now, how can we show some logical relationships between corresponding claims? The square of opposition helps. As you can see, the top arrow shows the A claim and the E claim are contraries, meaning they are opposites. They can't be both true, but they can be both wrong. For instance, if I say all men are mortal, and that is true, then definitely we can't say no men are mortal. The I and O claims are called subcontraries. They can both be true, but they can't be both false. The diagonal arrow, or arrows here, suggest that the opposite diagonal corners cannot have the same truth value and are therefore contrary. Look at these figures. Look at the opposite diagonals, figure 1 and figure 4. Aren't the same areas marked? Yes, they are. But remember that the shaded area means there is nothing there. But what about X in figure 4? Does this also mean that there is nothing? On the contrary, it means we are talking about that area. So, these two are contradictory claims. So the diagrams for corresponding A and O claims say exactly opposite things. Now let's make a sentence. All animals are living creatures. What categorical claim is it? A claim. Now let's make a corresponding O claim. Obviously using the same terms as S and P. Some animals are not living creatures. Now if I use the A claim and say the A claim is true, definitely the O claim is false. Let's think of another example. This time, let's say some animals are not dangerous animals. This is an O claim. Is it true? Yes. Now, what is a corresponding A claim for the sentence? All animals are dangerous animals. So if the claim that we had as the O claim is true, then A claim can't be true. So it must be false. Now, you can pause a video and make similar claims. Now pause the video and make similar statements about contraries, sub-contraries, and the diagonal opposites, and see whether they make sense to you. You can find some sentences that can help. Now pause and start this activity. Welcome back. Remember, if you have the truth value of one categorical claim, you can often deduce the truth values of the three corresponding claims by using the square of opposition. But this is not always the case. For instance, if you know claim A is false, you can't deduce the truth value of a corresponding O claim. We will come back to this. But for now, let's move on and talk about three categorical operations. Okay, so we'll start with the three categorical operations. Now, read the sentence on the slide. All E and I claims, but not A and O claims, are equivalent to their converses. By the way, converse means opposite. Anyways, what does this mean? Claims E and I are said to be converses. It means E and I claims, or in E and I claims, you can replace the subject term or class with the predicate term or class without causing a change in meaning. Let's make a very simple example. No living things are objects. What is this sentence? Let's just say, what is the subject class or the subject term in this sentence? Living things. And the predicate class or predicate term? Objects. Now, change the two terms. No objects are living creatures. Does this change the meaning? No. Now read this sentence on the slide. All categorical claims of all four types A, E, I, and O are equivalent to their obverses. What does this mean? This is the rule for obversion. But let's try to understand what it means. There are two things we should know before we go ahead with obversion. We should know actually two concepts, the concept of the universe of discourse and the complementary class. The universe of discourse is what we know as the whole, which is made up of some parts. A complementary class is all the parts of the universe except the part mentioned as the predicate term. Now, what does this mean? I'll explain, but then don't worry about it. We will look at some examples and we'll see what that means. What do we call those parts? We call them complementary parts. What parts? The parts except the predicate, maybe. We can use the term none to refer to the complementary terms. Now imagine I make a claim about the Japanese people without using the term Japanese. Now the people of the world is obviously my universe of discourse. The Japanese people are a term in my argument, but all those who are not Japanese are my complementary class. Now, to find the obverse of a claim, we should do two things. First, change affirmative to negative or negative to affirmative, meaning an A claim, for example, becomes an E claim, or an O claim becomes an I claim. And then replace the predicate term with its complementary term. This concept is known as conversion. Some examples can help you understand the concept better. Do you remember the rules for obversion? Please pause the video and do this activity. On the next slide, I'll show you the answers. Now here you have the answers. I'm sure you did them correctly. So we can now move on to our next categorical operation. Now, contraposition. Contraposition only applies to A and O claims. You can see that I have beautifully drawn a wiggly line around the claims, right? To contrapose a claim, we should do two things. One, switch the subject and the predicate terms. This means the subject becomes the predicate and the predicate becomes the subject. And step two, use the complementary term. Now let's look at some examples. Now pause the video and apply the rule to contrapose these claims. Now pause the video and check your answers. Let me just tell you about a first sentence in plain English. We can say, if you're not a Muslim, you cannot be a Sunni, right? Right. Okay. Remember the three operations we talked about are really important for what we'll do next, so please make sure you can do the exercises and learn the operations well. Goodbye and take care.